Alright everybody, welcome back to Crimson Desert. This is going to be a benchmark on an RTX4070. Now I have CPU Z turned on right here for hardware specific reasons. I need you guys to see what I'm working with. So I got an Intel 13th gen i7-13700F. I'm working with a 32 gigs of RAM DDR5 at basically almost 4.5 gigahertz actually. Excuse me. I don't do these videos often. And then we're working on an RTX4070, okay? Which is 12 gigabytes GPU right here. Now, there are reasons as to why I'm even showing you this. First of all, Crimson Desert. Let me stop this video, which is going to run by default for some reason. Crimson Desert has these specifications for the minimum and the recommended, alright? Now here's the deal. This game feels weird to me. And I'm gonna tell you why. Now, what I did was go from VSync on to VSync off. It was on by default. Then I had full screen. I went from full screen to borderless because I have a 3-screen setup. It's already recognizing my in-game, or rather, I should say my actual screen resolution, which is 1440p. Notice that I have upscale mode off, so no DLSS, no FSR, no XESS, and whatever else. And then the game defaulted to... What I'm gonna go back is to the Ultra, because this is the default, okay? It said custom because I touched the ray tracing. I needed to confirm something, and I will let you know something about that right now. Ray tracing is weird in this game. I believe ray tracing is hard-coded into the game to be on by default. I believe this setting specifically here being for basically compatibility reasons instead of an actual on-off setting, which is kind of weird to me, but essentially what you need to know is that basically this game has ray tracing on by default, and you can literally not turn it off. Okay, you cannot turn it off. Maybe somewhere in the files if you tweak some specific setting, but I'm not aware of that yet. Okay, anybody knows? Let me know. Okay, but again, ray tracing is on by default. You cannot turn it off. Turning it off, you know what, let me show you. I will apply, it's still on, and then we will go in game. Now, here's the thing. This is, I have not moved from this spot since I've booted the game in the previous video, okay? If you haven't watched my previous video, it's related to the menu hotkeys, to the end user license agreement, privacy related aspects, modding, blah. You should probably watch that. Now, what I want to talk in this video specifically is performance. For that reason, I have Riva Tuner and MSI Afterburner. If you want to install either of those, give me a second. Riva Tuner and then MSI. Okay, if you want to install either of those, links are going to be in the description. This is Riva Tuner from Guru 3D. And then this right here is the MSI Afterburner. I'm using 466 Final, not the beta. Okay? Alright, let's get that out of the way. You will notice something when I turn on DLSS. I will tell you that specific thing at that point in time. Now, this is, again, the Ultra preset, and while performance doesn't seem to be heavily affected, there is some major issues I want to talk about in this game right now. The first thing I noticed when I started moving, there is delay. I don't know how to check delay. Somebody let me know how you check delay. But there is massive delay, at least on the Ultra preset. I have there's like at least a second delay. Okay, from when I click and when I move the camera, there's like at least a second delay. When I move the camera, I get motion sickness. Now, here's the deal. Accessibility has blur intensity and depth of field. For some reason, they're not in the graphics settings, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But for some reason, Pearl Abyss did this. Now, here's the deal. I turned these off, right? I'm also using a mouse because I'm on a PC and I'm most comfortable with a mouse and keyboard. However, I have done the same with a controller, but I will plug in my Xbox controller, because in the previous video I have tested my DualShock one, and I have been disappointed by some stuff, which I don't really want to touch on anymore. But let's just say controller feels alright, I guess. It feels worse. Mostly because I have changed some settings in here in the input. I changed camera speed and I don't actually know the correct speed for the controller. So I'm gonna go up to 50 and I wanna see, how does this feel? It's delayed. It's at least a second delay, maybe more on a controller. I am connected on an Xbox 360 controller. Okay, it's an Easy SMX. It's not one of those official Xbox controllers by Microsoft. It's an Easy XMX controller. Okay, it's an ESM9110. Okay, which I use for most of the games that I play. And it usually has no issues, and this is not Xbox specific issue, okay? This is mouse as well, and then it also feels weird on the DualShock controller. So, while I have 60 FPS, it feels like I have frame gen on, but worse, okay? Again, this is an RTX 4070 we're talking about. I am on Ultra. It does say 60 FPS, but it feels delayed AF, okay? Now, that's the first thing I noticed when booting up the game. Second, we had 60 FPS. 59 to 65-ish, I'm gonna say. We're turning this off, okay? Hit apply. Again, we are on Ultra. I turned it off. Notice how the FPS did not increase whatsoever. Notice how the game does not look different whatsoever. Alright? There is no improvement. There is no loss in visual fidelity, visual clarity, visual quality. There are no losses whatsoever because this goddamn setting doesn't work. So my understanding is that ray tracing setting here, specifically, is for compatibility reasons. Now, I don't know if this affects Nvidia specifically. I cannot test AMD. I only have an RTX 4070, an RTX 1660, and an RTX 3060, I believe. Now, let me know if you want to see a benchmark on either of those. Okay, the 1660 is a laptop, so you have been warned. Alright, now, what I want to see is if I go on medium... Can I please move? Okay, I go on medium. I want to see, again, it's defaulting to ray tracing on. So whatever you do, ray tracing is gonna be on. But this, again, compatibility reasons. Notice how it turned off advanced water effects on medium. Anyway, let's check the FPS difference. Okay, the delay, first of all. The delay got a little bit better in turning the camera. However, I still feel like I'm controlling an airplane instead of a player, a character, okay? I'm not feeling like I'm playing Skyrim or other games, for example. This feels like I'm controlling an airplane, and my FPS, while it has increased from Ultra preset, it's not going past like 70 in the exact same area. 71-ish, 73, 74, okay, that's the highest we've seen. Okay, I haven't moved from this area yet since the beginning of the video. Alright, now, that's medium. Whoops, my bad, that's credits. Also, in the last video, I haven't touched this license thing. I have looked at it, there's nothing of importance here. You don't care for this. But I thought I'd check, just in case I missed something in the last video, when talking about the EULA and stuff, which again, you should probably read. Also, check the video if you haven't read it. The EULA, that is. Alright. What I want to do is first of all tell you guys that I will be turning on DLSS starting from this point forward, okay? We're going to DLSS not FSR. Again, I know FSR is a thing a lot of you people use. However, I'm on Nvidia, I can afford to use DLSS, and it's overall the better option, okay? I'm gonna go with DLSS 4.0, and we're gonna stick to quality. Again, we haven't seen past 74 FPS in the same exact spot. I haven't moved. No frame gen right now, no reflex, no reconstruction for the rays, okay? No VSync. I haven't changed anything else. We're just DLSS and quality. Now, because I kind of feel obligated to tell you guys what I did. Here, inside computer / HKey local machine software Nvidia Corporation Global NGXCore, again, this is specifically an Nvidia setting. You create a DWORD 32-bit value, okay, like this. Name it ShowDLSSIndicator. I'm gonna delete this because I've done this previously. And then hexadecimal 400 or decimal 1024, okay? And what that does is it enables the thing down here, the DLSS HUD UI, okay? And that's gonna tell us the preset, the in-game resolution, the resolution it's rendering back to, which is my screen's resolution, which is 1440p. Okay. The 1704 by 960 is the game's current internal resolution on quality preset DLSS, with apparently render preset K. Okay. Now we've gone up by about 10-ish FPS in the same exact spot, which honestly tells a lot. But here's the deal, this still feels like a fucking airplane. So Pearl Abyss, whatever you've done with camera motion, it's giving me actual motion sickness. Again, I have turned off blur and depth of field specifically because of motion sickness. And this feels like I'm controlling an airplane. It's delayed, it feels like click drag, okay? This feels like click drag. It feels like you click and then you drag instead of just straight up moving. That's how it feels. It feels like, how do I put it so you guys understand? Think War Thunder, think GTA 5 airplane or helicopter controls. Think Arma helicopter controls or airplane controls. Think, I don't know, Microsoft, that flight simulator game, I forgot, airplane controls. It feels like Star Citizen starship controls. It feels like this is not a character, it feels like I'm controlling an airplane, is what I'm trying to say, okay? This feels delayed. Delayed like by at least a second, bare minimum, I feel. That's just the feeling I get from it. It's driving me crazy, and I hope there's some way to fix it. If there is, please let me know. Okay, we have seen as far as 87 FPS. Now I'm gonna move towards the fire. Just a little bit because I don't want to engage in combat. I don't know if this is combat or not. I need to check, first of all, flickering. Again, this is the DLSS 4.0. First of all, I need to check any sort of flickering. Now, I'm pressing caps lock because the game's told me that caps lock is the default keybind for locking onto enemies, and these do not seem to be enemies currently. So, I need to look at fire and flicker. Now, I don't know if YouTube's gonna capture this correctly, because YouTube rendering is weird and it loses a lot of the visual fidelity and clarity and quality overall. However, I kind of feel obligated to let you guys know what recording settings I have for this. I'm going with constant QP of 28 on high tuning, slower, better quality preset. Main profile, multipath mode to single pass. Okay. These are my settings for recording this. I don't know if I'm gonna have to do any sort of editing, which may or may not affect quality further, but what I'm noticing here right now, also, why is my mouse on screen? That's weird. So, let me check. Oh, that's cool. If you tab out, you can actually see your mouse on screen in borderless window mode. If you tab out and don't click inside the game window, that is. That's a little cool, maybe possibly unintended feature. Now, there's some flickering going on right here, okay? Right here. Now what I want to see is if this changes if I go back to no DLSS whatsoever. I don't know if YouTube's gonna capture this. Yeah, it changed. There is barely... No, there's almost no flickering whatsoever there. Okay? Again, this is medium quality. Okay, I was waiting for FPS to kind of stabilize, so it seems it's kind of stabilized around an average of 64, is what I want to say. It's saying 66, 65. Anyway, it's an average, 70 average FPS, but again, this right here, what you're seeing is already not correct information because it's also taking into consideration the fact that I was using DLSS and I had higher frames. So I'm gonna say an average of 63-ish. 62, 63. Okay, that's my average on medium. On an RTX 4070. Okay? No DLSS. On medium settings. Okay? Medium. Now, I am gonna go... Let's go to low. I want to see how the game looks on low. Notice how low turned off ray tracing thingy. Which has me worried. Okay, low setting does not look bad. And it's basically giving me... Oh my god, it's still giving me motion sickness on the camera. It is so annoying. Pearl Abyss, please fix. This should not be a thing. Why does this feel so bad? Like, you can clearly see me... I'm trying my hardest to rotate the camera faster. It's quite literally resisting my turning. Again, it feels like I'm controlling a fucking airplane. It's so bad. Again, we're not talking about the gameplay, we're talking about camera control right now and performance. And it feels like my camera is delayed. Okay? The movement of my camera feels delayed. This is related to performance. Okay? I'm not gonna touch on combat performance just yet. We're keeping that for later in the video. The reason I'm keeping this for later in the video is because I haven't played the game at all just yet. Okay? Again, the game literally just released like a couple hours ago. It's the 20th. So, we are basically on low preset. For some reason this is off, so I'm gonna turn it on. I believe post-processing might affect ray tracing. For some fucking reason, we do not really have many details of what these settings actually do. Well, post-processing tells us display vivid images by applying realistic lighting, shadows, and reflections. Okay, but then why do we have shadow quality, reflections, and lighting here separately? Let's touch on lighting. Adjust the quality of lighting effects. Increasing this setting provides more realistic lighting, but may impact performance. Low. Lighting effects are rendered simply, prioritizing performance. Again, what exactly does lighting mean? Is this global illumination? Is this ray tracing? Is this, you know, other forms of lighting rendering and whatever? Excuse me for not really being all that technical. I don't usually do benchmarks, but this is one of those. So what I want to do is bump this up to... Let's go Ultra, because Ultra is what they suggested initially. So we had an average of 84-ish, I want to say, before. Now this is Ultra Lighting and Ultra Post-Processing. I will keep shadows on low intentionally, and I've turned on the ray tracing feature. Guys, I don't want to be that guy, but I don't think these options work correctly. I get the feeling this is kinda like Unreal Engine 5. I know this is using Pearl Abyss's own proprietary engine, but this is giving me Unreal Engine 5 vibes, okay? And I'm a little worried, okay? I need to go back to check settings on Steam. Not settings, system requirements on Steam, on the store page. And we need to check. Now, nowhere nowhere, and I do mean literally nowhere here, does it specify that you need to use DLSS for these graphics cards to reach 60 FPS. Nowhere does it specify that you need to use frame generation for these graphics cards to reach 60 FPS. Now, if I'm getting 85, okay, I want to go back to settings. If I'm getting 85, okay, I'm turning back everything to low. This is essentially the low preset. You know what, let me make it easier for you guys to understand. We're going to low. Okay, everything's low. Now, if I'm getting an average of 84, I want to say, 84 FPS, kinda. Okay, on an RTX 4070, I do not believe this is gonna reach 60 FPS. On low settings. On a... what is this? A GTX 1060. And an RTX 2080. And AMD equivalent. Especially if ray tracing is hard-coded / baked into the game. Which kinda feels like that is the play they have gone for. Okay? Alright, now, I'm gonna bump this to absolute ludicrous levels of maximum right now. Which is cinematic preset. Actually, do they have a preset for cinematic? They do. Cool. Alright, everything is... lighting quality is cinematic. We go into max, okay? I'm gonna hit apply, and I wanna see. Again, this is 1440p, but nowhere does it specify that this is for 720p, 1080p, or 1440p, or for 4K. So the logical assumption would be this, without DLSS frame generation on, or 180p, because we're talking PC specifically here, because this is Steam, okay? So, nowhere does it specify that you would need to run DLSS, frame generation, or anything, for anything above low, or medium, or high, for that matter, okay? So the bare minimum to run the game are obviously, judging off of this, obviously not enough to get to 60 FPS. It's not even reaching 25. It's 23, and I believe this may not even be the most expensive area of the game. Okay, it reached 28. So when you look at fire and lighting specifically, it tanks frames by at least 5-ish on average. Okay. Again, I'm not looking at bodies of water. We're not looking at super large landscapes and such. No, this is just the forest and some lighting and the house. A cabin and some people with some... I forgot what these are called. The goddamn insects that are giving us some extra cute lighting. And then we have some wind and some physics, which they do seem to work quite well, but you can't really see that because my frame rate is horrible right now. So let's turn this to the actual cinematic quality level of lighting, and I want to see if there's an actual difference. Oh my god, what the fuck? Okay, wait, this changes things. What the fuck is the difference between max and cinematic lighting quality? Why is there such a drastic FPS decrease? I am losing at least 25 FPS. That's bare minimum if we go from quality lighting preset to maximum. From cinematic to maximum, excuse me. So what the fuck are the differences? Because it doesn't really look much different, is what I'm trying to say. This game feels like Cyberpunk, but with less settings, is what I'm getting at. Okay? Because some settings in Cyberpunk make absolutely no sense because they literally touch nothing, but your performance increases, but the visuals look literally the same. I get the feeling this is what Pearl Abyss is also doing with their engine with this game. So just some settings are kind of just on by default, even if you turn them off. And then some settings, if you go back, if you go all the way to max, just get super omega overdrived, and you literally don't get told anything about anything. Now, what I want to do is maintain cinematic And as you've seen, I have an average of... I think my average, because again, it's taken into consideration everything, I think my average currently is about 48, okay? I think I have a 48 average. Again, in this very, very specific scene that I'm testing on. I want to go to video settings and upscale mode. And then I'm gonna test between FSR quality and let's see, it's FSR 3.1, DLSS 4.0, and DLSS 4.5, and 4.5L. I don't know the difference between 4.5 and 4.5L, but I'm gonna throw a wild assumption and say 4.5 uses a DLSS preset for rendering K, and then this is obviously L, but we will actually check that. Now, I also don't exactly know if 4.5 runs on the 40 series, or if I'm gonna need an RTX 50 series card. I believe I need the 50 series, which this tells me that it's not available for me. I need to confirm this. Does DLSS 4.5 run on RTX 40s? Let's see. Okay, so apparently it runs on the 40 series. Fair enough. But we will probably not be getting past 2 frame generation, X2 FS, or FG. Because I know the 50 series has MFG, as in multi-frame generation, which lets you go up to like ×8 or something. Some BS cringe levels of frame generation, which gives you even more input lag. You're already seeing the input lag here, apparently. Or just lag in general. It's not really... It has me a little confused. Okay. I'm gonna look specifically at the MS of CPU and GPU. And this is only in the menus. Okay, so there's less GPU and CPU MS, which is kind of weird, but fair. I guess it kind of makes sense. Overall, on average, they're kind of the same when it comes to input lag and such, or just lag in general on your CPU and GPU, I think. All right. So I said an average of about. You know what? Let me turn it off and check again. Okay, I said an average of about 48 FPS. 49-ish. Let's say 48. Okay. Upscale mode, FSR. Quality is what I want to see. No frame generation. Okay, FSR. I am seeing some shimmering and some artifacting happening with foliage movement. I'm already seeing some annoying stuff. But I like the reactivity of everything when I walk through them. The bushes. There are physics happening. I don't know if you can see it in the fire, but there's a little bit of flicker and everything kind of just looks a little bit grainy. This is quality preset. Again, you're not seeing the overlay because this is for DLSS only. The HUD down here. Now I'm gonna go to DLSS 4.0. I'm gonna apply. Now this is preset K in 1440p, rendering the game internally and at an internal resolution of 1704 times or x 960. Okay, so this is 960p basically. It looks a little better than FSR, I'm not gonna lie. It looks a whole lot better, actually. Less grainy overall. Kinda blurry-ish, but better. Performance, I kinda need to check, so I'm gonna say 64 on average. Again, this is tested on an Nvidia RTX 4070, so this may be different on an actual AMD card. It feels like... Performance might be better on FSR 3.1, but it looks a little worse. I'm gonna throw a wild guess and say in this scene specifically, it's 65 on average. Yeah. This is kind of what the game is confirming as well right now. Even though it varies. Then DLSS 4.0. Again, quality, no frame generation, no VSync, no whatever. Same scene. It's still kind of 65, 64-ish on average. Looks a little better. For some reason, my camera moved. I did not touch my mouse. Anyway. Now, for some reason, we don't have access to any other type of FSR. So 3.1 is only one you get access to. And there's no XESS or anything else in terms of upscaling apart from Nvidia DLSS 4.0, 4.5, and 4.5L, which this game is heavily Nvidia biased, it seems, which I don't mind because I am an Nvidia user, but it's gonna affect a lot of users in general. Now, Nvidia DLSS 4.5. We had a 64-65 average before. This already looks to me like it might be a 66 on average, maybe. No, it's pretty much the same. It says preset K. Fair enough. The internal resolution is exactly the same. Okay, the foliage still kind of the same. Kind of blurry-ish. A little grainy. Kind of similar. Kind of similar to 4.0. There are basically no differences from what I'm seeing. Maybe in the 1% low, but I don't care much about the 1% low. I'm not gonna lie. I know a lot of you do. I don't, because why care about the 1% low when the actual FPS is what matters? I don't care about the 1% lows. To me, as an average gamer, the actual frame rate is what matters. The average frame rate. And what I get usually when I play. And I'm never gonna reach 23%. Or 23 frames, excuse me. Because I am trying my hardest not to reach that. Anyway. Let's do preset L. Quality, no reflex, no nothing, okay? It's still saying preset K. Again, to the registry edit, okay? ShowDLSSIndicator. Registry edit, HUD specifically for Nvidia DLSS. It's basically a developer HUD, okay? UI thing. And I don't think it's recognizing preset L as an actual thing. So whatever this game is saying it's using, it's in fact not. Okay? Maybe if I reboot the game, but do I want to do that? It's gonna take a while to actually get back into the game because the initial loading is actually cringe. And you have an unskippable cutscene every single time you load into the game, which is fucked up if you ask me. Like, that actually needs to not be a thing. It needs to be skippable. Why is that a thing? Luckily, you don't need to run shader compilation every single time. This supposed preset L is on average. I know it's saying 65, but I'm gonna throw a wild guess, and based on seeing it get lower than 64, I'm gonna say 64 on average. Okay? Because I'm seeing it go all the way to 63. So, performance-wise, it's kind of similar. It looks kind of the same. Let's check if there's anything extra happening with lighting and such. So, foliage, kind of the same. Blurry-ish, grainy-ish. Let me show you what I mean. Pause. Here, okay? This is the foliage that I was looking at in the background. Looks a little weird. A little, even here you can tell. It's a little blurry, a little grainy, a little meh. We're seeing some frames being improved, but again, I have clicked out of the game, and that might be why. Also, I'm sitting at a very, very specific angle, which, as you can see, going back to the other angle, my frames were instantly lowered back to 64, 63, 65. Alright. Now, ultra performance, we don't care about this. Performance is what we actually care about. And I don't care for preset L. I don't know if there's an actual difference, but my renderer has been changed to preset M, by the way, which is interesting. Now this is performance. It looks grainier, sharper, and I kind of feel like the delay on the camera got a little bit better. It's not as delayed. It doesn't feel as worse, as bad, if you will. It's definitely a little better, but you can't really tell. But if you can't tell, what I'm doing right now is I'm moving my mouse to the left and to the right aggressively, which normally would end in this. Okay? But faster. Again, this feels delayed. This feels delayed. I have 80 FPS. I'm gonna throw a wild guess and say it's 75-ish on average, based on my mental calculation, because the average says it's 66, even though that's incorrect right now. Also, I don't know why the render preset changed from K to M on performance. That's actual bullshit. Also, in case you haven't noticed, the net in-game internal engine rendering is just slightly higher than 720p. It's 736 right now, which doesn't look all that bad, honestly. It really doesn't. However, I don't like the level of sharpness and how grainy it is. Now what I need to check is the flickering on the lighting and foliage and stuff. So kinda here. Yeah, it's a little bad. Here, you're seeing it's extremely sharp and it's affecting the quality of the grass. Even here, you can already see quality drops. Even here, like here, it's not even rendering the entire grass. It's kind of cutting. It's kind of cutting into the grass and just not rendering the entire model of the grass itself, which is kind of weird. And then over here, there's a lot of movement, and it looks better than what I've seen in other previous benchmarks. So I don't really know what to tell you guys about that, but in this specific angle, I have 80 FPS average. Now when I move, obviously that's gonna drop. Now do what you will with this information, but again, if you drop DLSS entirely, which I don't know why you would do that, you drop it entirely, and then these settings with cinematic lighting quality, I have 40, I'm gonna say 48 FPS on an average. And to me, this kind of looks blurry. Blurrier than it should look in the background grass. So pay attention to this side right here. Okay? This right here. It looks grainy and blurry, which is weird. Now, I'm not seeing any specific sharpness setting here in the video settings. There's contrast. Let me boost the contrast up to 100, see what that does. Just makes it look bad. Fair enough. Let's go down to 0. Okay, so that's basically what contrast does, which seems to be affecting performance to a certain degree, kinda, I think. We shall check in a minute. Okay, not really. Game kinda performs the same. It just kinda look that way because my FPS was a little unstable. This is cinematic, which is fair, I guess. But I was expecting it to kind of run above 55 on cinematic. I'm not gonna lie. I know this is 1440p, so I feel like I should lower. Now, this is not full screen on my screen, but this still feels like airplane mode for my character when I turn the camera. And it's averaging about 68, 67 FPS. 67. Anyway. You're clearly seeing this is not full screen on my screen because, you know, my screen is 1440p, so I can't really afford to play in 180. I would need to full screen this, which I'm gonna do, just for the heck of it. Okay. And I want to see if the average improves at any point in time in full screen. Again, testing so far has been done in borderless windowed. Its performance is still kind of the same. In fact, I think it's a little bit lower in full screen because it's essentially trying to upscale to 1440p. Okay. It's 180 internal, but it's upscaling it to 1440p, so I'm kind of losing 2 frames here and there, I guess. Anyway. Yeah. Yikes. So, I'm gonna just throw a wild guess and say it's gonna affect... Why is it only this side? Why can't I just... Hello? Why is this not working? Anyway, let's go on low. Okay? Okay. 180p low. Which honestly... Tell me if you're seeing visual differences, because I'm barely seeing anything different from cinematic. Which is the wildest part. Low looks pretty much the same as cinematic. I think at some point developer stopped properly optimizing what low settings actually mean and what cinematic and high and ultra presets actually mean. At some point they just kind of stopped and they started heavily relying on DLSS and frame generation. And then they just kind of stopped caring much about settings. Also, as I've mentioned in the previous video, I'm gonna stop the benchmark now because there's literally no point in me going further. As you've seen, the game pretty much looks really good. The game's confirmed to be playable on certain handheld devices. I think the Ally runs it pretty well. I believe there are some issues on Steam Deck, but yeah. Anyway, I'm barely seeing any differences. Maybe in the lighting a little bit, and maybe in the shadows a little bit, but from low to ultra, or rather from low to high to ultra and to cinematic, there are barely any differences. I need to see. I'm going to ultra from low. Yeah, no, there's barely any difference. I'm losing 30 FPS for barely any sort of increase in visual quality. This could easily run past 100 FPS in 180p on low if the low preset was actually a low preset. Okay? While it looks good, the low preset is basically a medium preset, bare minimum, is what I'm saying. So the low preset is not created to be a low preset. It's basically a medium graphics quality preset. And the medium is basically high, and anything above that is minimal increases, except for some goddamn inexplicable reason. You know what? Last time. We're going to low, okay? This is low. And then we're going to max. This is maximum quality of lighting on low preset. My FPS are 40. 42 average. That's crazy. And there's barely any sort of visual increase whatsoever. That's the crazy part. Alright, I'm gonna turn this off, and then I need to talk about something very, very specific. Again, this game does not have any sort of setting in graphics, in video, okay, in graphics, in accessibility. There is no sort of setting for lens flare. There's no toggle for lens flare. There is no toggle for chromatic aberration, which, again, as I've mentioned in my other video where I've talked about in-game settings and the EULA, lens flare and chromatic aberration are effects you typically see in camera lenses, and maybe possibly through certain specific windows, but not usually you would see with the human naked eye, okay? You don't have lens flare and chromatic aberration in real life showing you the effect of a sun ray through a lens. That's not really how the human eye works. You're not seeing it that way, okay? It's a little weird to me that we have lens flare and chromatic aberration on by default and no way to change that. I also feel the need to mention that there is no specific toggle for NPC/crowd density, okay? You cannot control this in any way, shape, or form through the menu, okay? I gotta be specific here. Through the menu, again, lens flare, chromatic aberration should be here, they're not. Ray tracing does absolutely jack all. It's maybe possibly just a compatibility thing, which you need to turn on to even use ray tracing. Probably, let me rephrase that. This is probably for compatibility reasons, so you don't crash as often or something. Is what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say. Turning this on off does nothing on your performance, and it affects no visual quality whatsoever. And then again, that NPC thing, which you can't increase or decrease the number, the density of the NPCs, which you can see on screen at the same time, that will heavily affect performance, okay? If it's very, very crowded, it's gonna very much affect performance on probably all hardware except super high-end, which I'm gonna throw a wild guess and say super high-end is anything above the RTX 4080 or AMD equivalent nowadays, okay? And again, CPU, I have an Intel i7-13700F, okay? Okay. And then I have a DDR5 32 gigs running at, well, technically 4400 megahertz, and no, I have no access to XMP profile editing, so I can't boost it further, even though I could. Thanks, Lenovo, you fucking bastards. You shouldn't have done me dirty like that. Anyway, yeah, it's blocked in Lenovo BIOS for some fucking reason, and I cannot unblock it. I've been trying for literally years. I don't know what I'm doing with BIOS, so I can't, you know, touch BIOS coding and stuff to reverse engineer their BIOS into letting me use XMP profile. So if you don't have access to XMP profile, know that with 4400 megahertz of RAM and 32 gigs, this is how the game is gonna run, as you've seen in this video. Alright, that concludes the video, and I hope you guys think carefully about whether or not you can actually properly run this game without using DLSS, without using FSR, and honestly, you should be using it. Now, what I want to see before I actually end the video is if I go to medium, turn this on, because why wouldn't you? And then turn on DLSS. I'm gonna go to 4.5 because I'm on an RTX 4070. I'm gonna go to balanced resolution, Actually, I'm gonna go to quality. I'm gonna turn on frame gen, ray reconstruction, and I have Nvidia Reflex, but for some goddamn inexplicable reason, there's no option to turn it off anymore if you turn on frame generation, I believe, or something. What is actually touching this? Okay, nothing. It's just DLSS itself. Having DLSS with quality preset. What the fuck? That's weird. Okay. There's no option for Nvidia Reflex on plus boost, by the way. So you should probably turn that on in your control panel, or the Nvidia app, or the AMD equivalent. Now, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna use 4.5 in 1440p, because that's what matters to me. I'm gonna go back to borderless windowed, okay, and we are gonna use these settings specifically. And then for graphics, I'm gonna be using these settings specifically for the first test, and then I'm gonna go to cinematic for the second. I wanna see how this affects my performance. Okay, so DLSS quality, 1440p, frame gen on, and I'm getting 120 FPS, which honestly, considering airplane mode, I don't really know if I want to use, but at the same time, it kind of feels the same. It's just as delayed, which is weird to me. Also, I had a loading thingy going on right now. I'm gonna throw a wild guess and say 120 FPS on average with frame generation on. Okay, in this same exact scene. Alright. Game pretty much looks the same no matter the preset you choose, at least in my eyes. It's almost basically the same. If anything, shadow intensity is what's affected more. Which, by the way, should be an option in any and all games in my opinion, because certain screens, like mine, are making the shadows apparently very, very intense. Okay? So shadow intensity should be a thing developers should start considering. Give us a slider, man. Or something. Let me turn the shadow intensity down. It's really black in some places. Which I like for immersion purposes, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of bad. Alright. I hope you guys enjoyed this little benchmark showcase thingy, whatever you want to call it. God damn, it's been 52 minutes. Holy. Did not even realize. Anyway, if you guys want to see actual gameplay of Crimson Desert on my channel, do let me know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go and try to figure out the best settings so I can actually enjoy the game.